Okay, walk with me on this one. It's gonna be kind of a journey. So me and my family recently welcomed our second kid into the mix. I know, right? And that means, in addition to the soul-rending joy and back-breaking sleep deprivation that comes with bringing a new life into the world, we had the super fun experience of spending 48 hours obsessing over something called bilirubin. Oh, and do y'all know what bilirubin is, or why it's such a big deal in the first couple of days of your life? You don't? Awesome. Get this. Turns out, in those moments right after you're first brought into the world, you've got a lot going on. You're suddenly hit with a whole mountain of responsibilities at the chemical level. And chief among them, you're suddenly in charge of modifying your entire blood supply so that you're better able to breathe out in the world. Specifically, it's now your job to break down this character, heme, the ancient, all-important iron carrier responsible for ferrying oxygen through your circulatory system. Heme can be incredibly dangerous if it breaks down in the wrong way, so your body is constantly cracking this little ring apart and recycling it once your red blood cells get worn out. But for reasons I'll get into, that's a ton of responsibility for a newborn liver to suddenly be saddled with, so up to 60% of all infants fall behind and develop a buildup of the end product of heme catabolism, bilirubin. And that leads to a very common condition called neonatal jaundice. For the vast majority of cases, this resolves quickly as you gradually catch up to all your newborn responsibilities. So it primarily serves as the very first existential crisis new parents experience as they try to get a handle on exactly what it means to bring a life into the world. And here's what blew my mind as I kind of over-researched this before we even had kids. It turns out that, for a small number of cases, neonatal jaundice might be tied to issues with the microbiome. You know, the trillions of helpful bacteria that live in your gut. Incredibly, your body doesn't break down bilirubin all the way. You process it most of the way and then dump it on your gut where bacterial enzymes actually finish the job. Which is so wild to me. Why is this system so complicated and so prone to get out of whack from the drop? Answering this question sent me on an absolute journey while I anxiously waited on the arrival of the latest member of Team Clockwork. There's a lot of incredible biology surrounding bilirubin in the first few hours of your life and beyond, enough that I just honestly had to share it with you, despite how deliriously sleep-deprived I am. Let's go ahead and explore all the incredible chemistry surrounding one of your most critically important metabolic processes. And hey, welcome back to Clockwork, a show about the chemistry powering your foundations. Subscribe if you want a better understanding of how your chemistry roots you to the world, and check out our community on Patreon to see our latest sticker packs, temporary tattoos, and papercraft molecules. But anyway, let's get right into exploring everything about bilirubin. Bilirubin is the second step in breaking down heme groups, specifically the heme B found in your red blood cells. Other heme variants can be found all over your body, with another god-tier specimen, heme C, being responsible for connecting subunits of your electron transport chain via cytochrome C in your mitochondria. Looking at heme though, at the center of this ring of carbon atoms is 4 nitrogens that stably hold on to a pretty reactive iron atom. Check out my last video to see just how useful heme is for breathing and like being alive and stuff. Your blood cells use the reactivity of this iron atom to grab onto and let go of oxygen, transporting O2 exactly where it needs to go, depending on the context. But you know all about that from the very first video I made. Check that out if you haven't. But importantly, the reactivity of this heme group can get out of hand if it breaks in the wrong way, leading to the creation of reactive oxygen species and all sorts of other cellular mayhem. So, rather than recycling old heme groups and leaving it up to chance, evolution has opted for the safer and more expensive option, completely destroying old heme molecules and rebuilding them from scratch in your mitochondria. Therefore, your body is constantly destroying older red blood cells before they can get too worn out, usually after about 3 to 4 months, scrapping them for parts. Specialized macrophages in your spleen and liver take care of this, detecting worn out red blood cells and devouring them. And this is where heme breakdown kicks off. Your macrophages crack open this ring, freeing the iron inside, creating a green intermediate called biliverdin, and then immediately they're going to break it down a little bit more into the main character of this episode, bilirubin. Now the important thing here is that bilirubin is not water soluble, so we can't just dump it off into the bloodstream and hope for the best. Instead, bilirubin is going to get packaged inside the specialized blood protein, which is human serum albumin, and from there it's going to get transported to the liver. And your liver only has one job here, and that's sticking 2 sugar derivatives onto bilirubin, conjugating it, which makes it water soluble and therefore way easier to transport. Now this is the part of the process where a lot of newborns find themselves in trouble, and there's 2 main factors driving the problem. First up, newborns are cracking these heme rings way faster than adults, producing basically double the amount of bilirubin that an adult would. And that's because, in order to adapt to breathing air, you basically spend the first couple of months of your life replacing your entire blood supply. And sidebar, let me unpack that real quick. In order to adequately absorb oxygen from your mom, you produce a specialized version of hemoglobin while you're, a fetus. This is a fetal hemoglobin, and it's just slightly better at binding to oxygen than adult hemoglobin, meaning that fetal red blood cells can easily pull oxygen from their mom's hemoglobin in the placenta. Adult hemoglobin is a balanced mix of 2 alpha and 2 beta subunits, while fetal hemoglobin swaps those betas for 2 gamma subunits, which are just a little bit better at binding a little tighter to oxygen. But the thing is, hemoglobin's job isn't holding oxygen though, it's transporting oxygen, meaning that to be successful at its job, it has to be equally good at letting oxygen go. So, right around the moment you're born, you produce a transcription factor that silences the fetal hemoglobin gene forever, and you spend roughly the first 6 months of your life destroying your entire fetal blood supply and replacing it with adult hemoglobin better suited for breathing air out in the open world, which adds up to newborns producing effectively double the volume of bilirubin that an adult would. Now, this bilirubin overload would be hard enough to deal with, but there's a second major factor here. Your liver simply is not building enough of a bilirubin cleanup squad fast enough. Now, in your liver cells, you've got this enzyme, UDP-glucuronyltransferase, UDP-GT, and its job is to stick those 2 sugars onto bilirubin. Now, as an adult, your liver is positively stocked with these fellas, but on day 1, you are seriously underprepared. At birth, most infants have only built about 1% of the UDP-GT they need. And after a month, you're lucky if you've assembled maybe 10% of the bilirubin cleanup squad you need, and you only achieve 100% somewhere around your 3 to 4 month mark. It's cool that the growth rate is kind of exponential in this way, but that initial lag is a huge issue. And also, hilariously, it turns out that your little baby liver tries to cut corners to keep up with demand. Instead of the full job sticking 2 of these sugars onto a bilirubin molecule, we're going to try to get by with just 1. Sure, a half-conjugated bilirubin still dissolves in water just fine, but stability is the issue here. Half-conjugated bilirubin isn't going to hold this structure nearly as well as fully conjugated bilirubin, meaning this little sugar, glucuronic acid, is prone to pop off anytime, anywhere. And that means that deconjugated bilirubin is going to be falling out of solution all over the place on its way to being removed by your intestines in those first few months of your life. Since bilirubin dissolves in fats and oils, it's most likely to build up in your skin and eyeballs, and that's going to turn those tissues a shade of yellow. This by itself isn't dangerous, but if you don't get that bilirubin buildup under control, there can be rare, dangerous complications, like toxic levels of bilirubin building up in other fatty parts of the body like the brain, causing a very dangerous kind of swelling. But let's stick to the basic scenario first. And to review, here's the general landscape of our problem here. In our first hours of life, we're cranking out bilirubin at double the normal production rate, while our dumb baby liver has only produced 1% of our bilirubin cleanup crew, which is an incredible mismatch of supply and capacity. So it's no wonder that most newborns get hit with some form of neonatal jaundice. But this mismatch stuck with me. That is an incredibly wide gap. Evolution can be way more clever than this. Is there any important reason our livers are completely fine with ramping up this slowly when the stakes are this high on day 1? And again, answering this question in particular sent me on a wild journey, and I only really have a clear-ish answer thanks to a paper that was only published last year. As it turns out, one angle we can use to explore this problem is the simple fact that we co-evolved with our microbiome. So now we'll explore the back half of bilirubin processing, but first we'll check out a quick message from this video's sponsor. Today's video is brought by the good folks at Hungry Minds and one of the wildest products I've ever been asked to sponsor. Meet the book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding Civilization. This is a massive, intricate book detailing, the full scope of human achievement. If you like how deep into the details I get with topics like bilirubin catabolism, I'm sure you'll also get a kick out of all the hidden depths this book has. We're talking hundreds of pages of intricate diagrams trying to succinctly describe all the technological and scientific facets that make up our civilization. As a 90s kid, I love how the illustrations here give off major Dinotopia vibes, and I love getting to share all these intellectual nooks and crannies with my firstborn. Exploring these diagrams has been a huge source of comfort during these months where sleep has been pretty hard to come by. And that was before I discovered that this book actually contains a hidden quest full of puzzles to solve. The book is an incredibly fun and deep thing to explore that makes a great gift or set piece in your living room. I mean, this thing raised over $2 million on Kickstarter and has been wildly successful for years now. Check out Hungry Minds by scanning the QR code on your screen or visiting mdsh.io/clockwork or clicking the link in the description. Clock Watchers can get 10% off using the promo code CLOCKWORK10 at checkout. Make sure you check them out. But anyway, let's get back to bilirubin. As it turns out, we get a lot of help getting rid of this yellow gunk once it hits our gut. And this is the paper that cracked things wide open for me. This awesome team from the University of Maryland and the National Institutes of Health finally isolated the enzyme from our microbiome that helps finish processing bilirubin in our gut. In so doing, they also proposed a bunch of new connections to help make sense of this bilirubin problem. There are so many ways to tackle the back half of bilirubin processing, but let's just drill down into the basic pathway first. First up, let's just rock through the core pathway that gets bilirubin from our liver to our exit points. From the perspective of our body, the story should end with conjugated bilirubin. This fella should stay dissolved in water and then go out the back door with the rest of the really toxic waste. And yet, lots of that conjugated bilirubin breaks back down into raw bilirubin once it hits our intestine. And that's even when you're an adult. More on that in a second. Again, raw bilirubin could pose a big problem, but luckily there are friendly critters in our microbiome who process this into urobilinogen, making it a little bit more water-soluble and therefore way safer to dispose of. Urobilinogen is then either further broken down into stercobilinogen in our gut by different bacteria, or it slips back into our bloodstream where the kidneys can have an easier time filtering it out, which for the most part eliminates any of the danger posed by excess bilirubin. Alright, cool. So thanks to our bacteria bros, we've got 2 clean, undramatic exits for bilirubin. Nice. But why is conjugated bilirubin breaking down in the first place? Now for newborns, we already explored the reason why. These UDP-GT enzymes in the liver are so overwhelmed by the bilirubin load that they're only half conjugating most of the waste, meaning that a lot of this bilirubin is bound to accidentally break down before it reaches the exit. But that's only part of the problem, which is why we now need to talk about the microbiome. And this is in no way comprehensive because the microbiome is such a massive topic and such an active area of study. But basically, the human gut is colonized by trillions of helpful bacterial species that partner with us in exchange for a safe place to live, amongst other things. You aren't just a person, you're an ecosystem, a rainforest's worth of species diversity, complex to a degree that is difficult to fathom. Your bacterial partners confer a lot of really important benefits to you, but I don't want to get bogged down in the basics. Let's go back to this paper and zero in on bilirubin specifically. And now, get this. It's likely that some species of your microbiome are deconjugating bilirubin in your gut, thereby, in some ways, causing this problem in the first place. Not when you're an infant, but once your liver has its act together and you're capable of properly packaging this goo. But there's a balance here once you're old enough, because there's just as many species in your microbiome that grab onto bilirubin before it can leave your gut and get all jaundicey. The researchers behind this paper managed to isolate the genes coding for this little protein complex in 5 different species found around the microbiome. The workhorse here is bilirubin reductase, which complexes with this little electron cannon and blasts bilirubin with electrons enough to reduce it to urobilinogen. Again, this conversion to urobilinogen disarms the danger bilirubin poses to our body. It's way less reactive and far easier to dissolve in water, which I mean, that's cool, I guess? But that leaves us with a really big question. Why? If bilirubin can be toxic to us, what on earth would these little bacteria want it for? And the answer here ties into that weird mismatch we see in neonatal jaundice. Because here's the plot twist. Yes, bilirubin can be very, very toxic in heavy concentrations. But in small amounts, bilirubin actually functions as one of the most powerful antioxidants produced by the human body. And this completely blew my mind when I first learned about it, because it is very counterintuitive. To keep it brief, an antioxidant is any compound that can help disarm free radicals in your cells. Your metabolism is actually a pretty violent process, and just using oxygen to breathe means that we're accidentally producing these rogue compounds all the time. You've probably heard of antioxidant supplements that supposedly help you clean these things up, but your body naturally produces different specific antioxidants for specific free radical situations. And antioxidants alone are a super complex topic, so don't jump to conclusions based on anything in this video. But yeah, depending on the situation, your body might use heme degradation as a quick antioxidant source in response to oxidative stress in your cells. And hey, maybe you can see where this is going. Can you guess one of the moments in your life where you're kind of guaranteed to have the most oxidative stress? That's right, it's those first few hours and days right after you're born. And this next part is extremely not medical advice. I could not be further from a doctor, but it could be that our livers are totally fine with being slow to start this bilirubin cleanup process because this excess of bilirubin, potentially, maybe, confers a little protection during the incredibly stressful transition to being out in the world and actually breathing air and stuff. And meanwhile, we do have our microbiome to help while our livers get their act together, because the structure of bilirubin also allows it to act as a terminal electron acceptor in certain anaerobic metabolisms. Turns out, a significant segment of our microbiome is composed of anaerobic critters who use all the little nooks and crannies in our gut as a place to hide from the pernicious influence of oxygen. And some of those fellas may, in fact, use bilirubin and urobilinogen to breathe, which is wild. Now, make sure you check out the last video I made to learn about how certain bacteria breathe using rocks instead of oxygen if you want more detail on this point, but I don't want to be here too long. Again, there is so much more research to do here, but after this paper identified the genes that code for bilirubin reductase, they cross-referenced those genes with known databases of metagenomes, basically a library of all the genetic information in the microbiomes of specific individuals, and found that a lot of sampled folks are missing bacteria that code for bilirubin reductase in the first 3-ish months of their life, which is precisely when you're the most likely to get hit with neonatal jaundice. Now, of course, these samples are very limited, so the picture here can get a lot more complicated pretty quickly. But it is so cool to see this weird little economy at play. It might be that our body simply leans into an excess of bilirubin to help deal with the stress of existing all of a sudden, while simultaneously trusting our bacterial partners to protect us from things getting out of hand, which is why so many cases of neonatal jaundice end up not being a big deal at all. But more importantly, it is impossible to know in the moment if a case of jaundice is going to be problematic or not, which is why it's really important to listen to your pediatrician if you're currently going through this as a parent. Things like phototherapy are really good at breaking bilirubin down into something your body can handle a little bit better with ease. This video only exists to add context around this messy topic, a few hypothetical whys to hopefully ease your mind while you're potentially soldiering through this situation. So, deep breath, let's complete the picture. Here's a simplified summary of what might be going on here for some folks in regards to bilirubin processing. In the first 6-ish months of your life, you're upgrading your blood supply to make it aerated as quickly as possible, which is dumping a ton of bilirubin onto a little baby liver that is simply not ready for this much responsibility this quickly, which means that your gut and other tissues are going to be full of deconjugated bilirubin as it falls out of solution. Incredibly, it might be that your body is fine with this because of bilirubin's blanket antioxidant properties. Luckily, at the same time, as your microbiome develops alongside you, some species of your gut flora will use that bilirubin to breathe, processing it into urobilinogen, which is a great solution to that problem. And sure, this means that throughout your life, those bacteria will also keep deconjugating bilirubin after your liver has gotten its act together. But as long as they keep making urobilinogen at the end, it all works out pretty okay. Because that's the genuinely fascinating thing about being here on this earth. It is amazing how much of an economy we've built up with our microbial partners. The microbiome's goofy, haphazard processing of bilirubin makes our own metabolism safer in the long run, because their circumstances allow them to benefit tremendously from bilirubin's reactivity. But I love how papers like these help us understand the economy of being a multicellular species with all sorts of commensal partnerships. It is amazing to see all the compromises and all the goofy little trade-offs our cells have to make just to keep us alive at baseline a little longer. We're at this incredible moment where our view into our inner molecular complexity is becoming so rich and interconnected. And that means we're starting to really unravel some of the deeper connections we have to this ecosystem we're hosting in our gut. Don't take anything in this video as gospel though, as there's just so much more to discover about the microbiome, and these connections are complicated and easily prone to revision. But finding the wonder in these connections has made being a parent all the more magical. It is astounding how much effort we put into those first few weeks of our time here on this good earth. And while I'm honestly glad it's impossible for me to remember my first years of life, bearing witness to that effort firsthand has been a loud reminder of one of the core philosophies behind this channel. Life just works. Even though your cells have to make all those compromises, and even though your metabolism can cause all sorts of mayhem, life really genuinely wants you to be here. And every one of your trillions of cells will work so hard just to push you a little forward second by second. It's hard to remember that sometimes, especially since I really haven't slept more than like 3 hours in the last 6 months. But in the end, I am just so glad I get firsthand evidence of just how much effort we put in to just be. Either way, that's a good enough place to end this. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. And hey, thanks so much for making it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like and subscribe so we can get a stronger foothold on this platform. At the same time, it would mean everything to me and my family if you look at everything we have on offer at patreon.com/clockworkshow. Projects this detail-heavy live and die by community support, and I'm working hard to make sure folks in my audience get a lot of benefits from their contributions to our community. At the same time, feel free to check out watchclockwork.com and sign up for our email list, and check out the heme hat I made in conjunction with this video if that's more your speed. Either way, if you made it this far, I would love to know what your favorite muscle is. It's important for the next video we're going to be publishing soon. To be honest, the biggest help you can provide this channel is making it this far. You've already done it, and I cannot begin to express how much I appreciate you being here right now. Things will get back on track a little more now that I'm actually pushing more than like 4 hours of sleep for the first time in months, but I mean, let's hedge our bets a little bit. Either way, that's all for now though. I really appreciate your time, and as always, I like to leave you with peace, love, and fully conjugated bilirubin. Everyone be well. Thank you so much.